welcome to the Chai Center and particularly the Chai Academy. Chai Academy is a plethora of classes that we give online, and you you may see many um, hundreds of previous classes, and that you can find them at thechaicenter.com / academy. So we've been going through interesting Jewish personalities, some good, some bad, some ugly. Today is a very different type of class because we're not going to be focusing in on the personality, but rather what they spewed, what they sought to do, and it's a trifecta. It's three people. One person started it, one person continued it, and now we have the contemporary fellow and their followers. So we're talking about the Nature Karta. Nature Karta means guardians of the city. And this is an organization very small. They'll have you believe there's thousands, but there's not. But they are dangerous, extremely dangerous, extremely fanatical. I don't know if you would call them extreme right or extreme left. I have no idea, but we know they're extreme, and they're called guardians of the city. Now, it was founded by a fellow by the name of Rabbi Amram Blau, whose father was born in Pressburg, and his mother was born in Jerusalem. And in fact, she can trace her lineage for hundreds of years in Jerusalem. They say that there were Jews living in Israel. So, when Palestinians tell you they weren't, they were. His mother is an example. I know people who were sabras from way back, and essentially what happened was in 1937, 1938, when Jews started to be able, was smuggled into Israel or came into Israel. There was quotas. The Balfour Declaration allowed Jews, to come. The White Paper, and there were quotas. I think 1,500 Jews a year, something like that. You can see all these classes about the Balfour Declaration, the San Remo Conference, the White Paper in previous classes. But Jews were coming in, and there weren't many Jews living in Israel. It was run by the Ottomans, and then the British mandated Palestine. This fellow, by the name of Amram Blau, resented the influx of secular Jews coming to Israel. So most of the Jews that live in Israel were somewhat traditional, if not downright observant, and he resented the European secular Jews coming. So that's really what got him started. He resented the fact, I guess he didn't view them as necessarily on equal ground with him as a fellow Jew. Very antithetical to the way I think, but but they were coming. He also didn't like the fact that they were in the majority, and they were going to continue to be in the majority, and eventually come to power, which they did. He resented the fact that now, and especially once the Holocaust happened, he resented the fact that Judaism and Zionism became synonymous. So he tried, and his followers tried, and those that took up the mantle after tried to separate the two. There was Judaism and there was Zionism. So while I yell from the rooftops that anti-Zionism is anti-Judaism, and it's a truism, this fellow put a wedge between Zionism and Judaism. Here he was. He looked the part, dressed the part of a Hasidic Jew, even though Nature Karta doesn't come from Hasidim. They come from actually the Vilna Gaon, which you can also look up the Vilna Gaon in the Chai Academy. We're getting to the point where we've discussed a lot. So they actually do not come from Hasidim. They're based in three places. They're based in Jerusalem, Monsey, and Williamsburg, but they're not Satmar. They're not Satmar Hasidim. They're not. Reason why some of them are based in Williamsburg is because the Satmar Rebbe, not the original, but Rabbi Yoel, who survived the Holocaust, he wrote a book, and and in his book, or actually his father's book, but in the books, both those books were written the fact that Mashiach, Messiah, will come, and then Israel will be ruled by Jews. Until that time, it will not be ruled by Jews, and we should not look to rule it either. We have to wait for Mashiach. So that's also part of their philosophy, is that for Israel to be ruled by a secular power, Netanyahu, Gantz, Shamir, Rabin, Eshkol, Meyer, Ben Gurion, is all anathema. It's all no. It shouldn't never happen. So you have the right to your own opinion. You have your right to your own thought process, and they do. And you can have people who but however, the reason why the ADL considers them to be on the fringe of normative Judaism is because of their actions, not so much their philosophy or ideology. Even Satmar, who share the ideology that Israel we have to wait for Mashiach to basically rule the land. Even they ostracize the Neturei Karta. So Amram Blau, some people call him Rabbi Amram Blau, I call him Mr. Blau. So he basically in 1938 he was a member activist, and he was a right-wing Orthodox, and he didn't like anything that strayed away from complete observancy, and he mocked anything that was less than. And he was a member of the Aguda. The Aguda was the normative Orthodox party in Israel, and in 1938 he broke away from Aguda, and he formed his own party called Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta is essentially, it's based on from some teaching in the Talmud, where Rabbi Judah Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, he sent two people to tour the land, and they toured the land, and when they came to a specific city, they said, "Where are the guardians of the city?" So this person said, "I'm a guardian of the city. I'm a guardian of the city." And they said, "Not so. Only the scholars can be guardian of the city." So he felt he was guardian of the city because he was a scholar. And he split from Aguda and formed his own political party, which gained much support in 1938. And it became really right-wing, extreme right-wing orthodoxy. Rabbi Amram Blau, the leader, specifically, he was imprisoned many times. One time is because he wanted all roads closed in Israel on Shabbat. And he was a violent protester. Another time is because he didn't like the way women dressed, provocatively. And it's no coincidence that this was in Mea Sharim, which they still have, they still do not allow women who are dressed immodestly to come into their neighborhood. He also and there was so many different things that he wanted. He was against the draft of women joining the army, so he protested and was arrested. And he was in Ramla prison. He was in other jails and holding pens, etc. Many times. He had 10 kids. by his wife Hinda. Very interesting story about him. His wife Hinda passed away, and he actually was a radical to the point where he wanted Jews to move to East Jerusalem, which was under Jordan, because Jews had no right to live in Israel. So he wanted Jews to move to Jordan. Anyway, it's an interesting story about him, is that a very unique story. You know, you never hear of this, but I guess because he was such a radical, he was hurt during an explosion in one of the wars between Arabs and Jews. And one of the things that he was hurt, he was specifically hurt to the point where he was hurt in his genitalia, where he could not have more kids if he tried. So he and his court ruled that he is what the Torah calls a krus shafcha, that his genitalia is damaged, and therefore was not allowed to marry a Jewess. But he wanted to get remarried. But he had this ban on him, which he said is based in biblical, that his genitalia was damaged, and I can't give you details. I have no idea, and therefore he wanted to marry a convert. So he did. He married Ruth ben David, and Ruth ben David was a French convert. Her name was Ruelle de l'Ancien or something like that. And she was actually a woman that she was immigrated to Israel as a non-Jew to Israel, and then eventually she took up the Zionist cause. Eventually she divorced her husband, and she became not only an Orthodox Jewess, she became an Karta, anti-Zionism Jewess. And she married much to the chagrin, because he made it so public that I can only marry a convert based on the Torah, that the rabbis weren't even happy with him because they felt it was just such an awkward, weird thing. And he married her, and she led the Neturei Karta when he died. This woman, she married an extreme woman. She married him, and when he died, she took over the cause. But essentially, Israel should not exist as a state. That is Neturei Karta. That is the Neturei Karta, bottom line. Now, when he died, he was taken over by another leader called Moshe Beck, Rabbi Moshe Beck. Moshe Beck lived in Israel. His parents, he actually was brought up in Hungary, where it's interesting, he lived in hiding for many, many years, 1941 to 1945, hiding from the Germans. He lived in Hungary. In 1945, when the Russians took over, it was safe for him to come out of hiding. So this fellow clearly understood what it meant to be a survivor of Holocaust, and survivor of German fascism. In 1945, the Soviets took over, and in 1948 he emigrated to Israel. Now he actually did come from Hasidim, from Vishnitz, but he parted ways, and because he joined the Neturei Karta, it was not a Hasidic enterprise. Hasidim rejected it. Satmar rejected it. So he came from Vishnitz, and Vishnitz rejected it. And he, together with a few followers, did the unthinkable. In March of 2006, they flew to Iran, and they met with the president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, and where they met with him and they unified with him. And they said, Ahmadinejad, you don't want Israel to exist? We are the spokesman of the Jewish people, and we don't want Israel to exist. Incredible, incredible outrage. Incredible. in December of 2006, it gets worse, is he and his followers, including the person that took him over, Rabbi Weiss, he flew to Iran where they had a conference on Holocaust denial. And they were there. Now, they knew the Holocaust happened. They flew with, by the way, with people like David Duke, right? One of the founders, one of the heads of the Ku Klux Klan. This is who they fraternized with. You know, in 2000 I don't know when it was, but they met with Farrakhan, who also is a Holocaust denier. But they flew there and they actually spoke. They spoke at the forum, and they didn't just remain quiet, you know, like mice. No, they reared their ugly head, and basically what they said was that Jews use the Holocaust. Jews abuse the Holocaust for the sake of establishment of Israel. I mean, so the Jews used the Holocaust as a pity party to get for Israel. And they said, as spokespeople, so this Rabbi Beck, Mr. Beck, idiot Beck, used the Holocaust. Jews abuse the Holocaust. And really, there's Jews and then there's Zionism. And they're two separate things. After they came back from this symposium, they were actually ostracized by the Jewish community in Williamsburg, in Mea Shearim, in Monsey. They had to they davened in their own, they prayed in their own synagogues because the local synagogues wouldn't have them. The schools threw out their kids. The kosher establishments would not serve them. And they were ostracized by the chief rabbi, Rabbi Yonah Metzger. Because they said to do such a vile thing, once again, have your opinion. But to do such a vile thing, and 2006 wasn't their first rodeo. In 2004 is they actually prayed at a prayer vigil for Arafat. They actually attended his funeral to show that their solidarity with the Palestinian people. And you can Google them. There's pictures of them standing with Hamas. There's pictures of them standing with Arabs throwing rocks at Jews, you know, and these well-built Palestinian hooligans, they're with them, and they're you could see them outside the Israeli embassy, outside the UN, with not with Israeli flags, burning Israeli flags, and standing there with Palestinian flags. They're standing there with women who have hijabs and burqas, etc. Right? So in 2004 they had a prayer vigil. In 2005, when the Jews left Gaza, they had a Shabbat in Gaza to throw salt on the wound. So they and their minions, their followers, their cohorts went to Gaza for a Shabbat, to hold a Shabbat in Gaza. Gaza's Judenrein. Jews, there are no Jews left in Gaza. We don't really know what their issues are, but there's no Jews in Gaza. That's what they wanted. But these are the type of things they did. In 2001, they went to the symposium on racism in Durban, South Africa. And if you remember, it was a debacle because the racism, it wasn't Rwanda, it wasn't, it was Darfur, it wasn't any other. It was all focused in on Israel. And in fact, many delegates left because it was the agenda was Israel. They were there. When there was the killing in Mumbai, of the where the Jews were killed in the Nariman house. I forget when it was, 2007, 2000. I don't remember. So they came out with a leaflet saying that this happened because Chabad, which owned the Nariman house, where the Chabad representative, the rabbi and rebbitzin, were killed, as well as people visiting. Chabad is Zionists, and therefore they were killed. I mean, this is the type of. Right. Then, when finally Moshe Beck died, in 19, I think it was 2017 or something, then this fellow who was very, very involved, his name was Weiss, Rabbi Weiss, I think Yehuda Weiss, so he took over the threshold. Now, Yehuda Weiss doesn't have any family. Yehuda Weiss, they were killed during the Holocaust. Very, very few members of the family. That didn't stop him from running to all these anti-Israel rallies, from running to all these burning the flag, Israeli flag, from trying to separate, put a wedge in between Israel, Jewish people, and Zionism and Jewish. And for a while they were advertising on the radio, and they must have raised a lot of money, because it was called, the Torah truth. This is the truth. Jews don't want to be under Israeli rule. We want to be under Palestinian rule. They did a lot of damage. So these three people, Weiss, who still does damage till this day, lives in Muncie, Beck, Blau, right? They've done more damage than we expect this from Abbas. We expect this from Arafat. We expect this from Ahmadinejad. We expect this from Nazis. We do not expect this from Jews who look the part, who pray, have tzitzis, to do what they did. Once again, even Satmar, who are not pro-Israel, don't take money from Israel, who don't particularly care ideologically with the Israeli government. They don't even vote, right? But they never would give money and support to the PLO. So they're turncoats, they're treasonous, they're traitors, and they're fascinating because they're Jewish leaders, albeit a few, but they're no leader of mine, and they're no leader of most of the Jewish people, and they are for sure not spokespersons or spokespeople, spokesmen for the Jewish people. They are outliers who've been exorcised and ostracized, and Rabbi Metzger put a ban, a cherem, basic it's ostracism, but with halachic, with Jewish law. It's not just I don't want anything to do with this creep. Jewish law, just like Spinoza. You can see him in the Chai Academy. Ostracize him, and a cherem, a ban of exorcism on these people, and they ain't friends of mine. More to come. You can comment here. I don't think anybody commented. Yes, are they mentally ill? Probably. The answer is they're probably mentally ill. Yeah, they probably are. But they have because of their ideology, they're willing to hurt, maim, kill people. If that's not mental illness, what is? Look, I have no love for Arafat. I have no love for the Palestinian people. But I don't want to kill him. I want peace. I don't want them to all die. I want peace. they knew by going to Iran was going to cause irrevocable harm. I would go to a conference on peace. I wouldn't go to a conference against Israel. I would not go to a conference that was pro-Palestinian. So are they mentally ill? Yeah, absolutely. But they're functional, and that makes them evil. God bless. You can comment here, you can feel free to share this if you know anybody that uses them as a weapon. You can see many of our classes and courses on thechaicenter.com/academy or on YouTube, the Chai Academy. May the Schwartz be with you.